Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is, of course, the Daily Ipswich part of the GSPN, where you will get all of your daily updates for Ipswich Town. And today, I'm joined by the brilliant Mr. Tom Crack. How are we, mate?
I'm very good, James. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. Lovely weather. We're finally getting in the UK now. Sun's out, good moods, good spirits. Hopefully Town can keep those good moods up, good spirits up this weekend.
Absolutely. It is a lovely day as well. So if you're listening and you're enjoying, the sunshine, good for you. Well played. So Tom, this sort of first part then, I thought we'd actually start with Palace and just talk about how good they've actually been in quite a, in the recent weeks, to be honest. I think they've been playing really well. I've been really impressed with them. I think you've said in the past as well. What have they impressed you with this season, Crystal Palace?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say they've impressed me this second half of the season. First half, they very much were. I spoke to Dan from the Palace team on the crossover episode yesterday. And they're kind of the news as to why they found this strain of form. They haven't really put it down to a formation change or a personnel change. It's just been over time, really, and they've managed to improve a lot. I think this start of the season was quite difficult. You losing Elise, you bet your best player going to Bayern Munich. It's always a big struggle. And I think we kind of saw that with not knowing who's going to take the brunt of responsibility. It seems that responsibility has kind of now just been shared amongst the team rather than one specific player picking it up. And yeah, I mean, I said yesterday how they're since January 1st, they're third in the league, 16 points with Liverpool and City, the only two teams above them. And I think the reason for that really is just finding that synergy. Palace are in a great position as a club where, they very much are seen as that middle of the park team, aren't they? Like, finishing above the top 10 is a great season for them, but they're never really flirting with the relegation zone come the end of the season. That's not the case again. And they just got some fantastic players in there. I spoke to Dan yesterday about how, they are kind of in a position where they are a selling club, the likes of, I feel like Eze and Gahey and potentially Wharton's days or years at the club are numbered. But I think as a fan base and as a business, if you want to call Palace a business, it's football team at the end of the day, but they're used to that being the case. I think clubs in that level of the Premier League, they're not expecting to hold on to those players for the prime of their career. They're expecting to go and stuff. Gahey, I think we very much expect him to go this past summer, especially how well he did for England last year as well. And obviously coming from Chelsea's academy back in the day as well. I think he very much will be leaving the club this summer, but I'm sure they'll find another diamond in the rough or a championship player who can come through as well. I mean, with Palace as well, they have the luxury of they can get the best players in the championship, but have that sort of luxury of most likely not going down. Whereas, we've had this struggle of a season of bringing the best players from the championship, but not having that certainty. Whereas I think if a young player from the championship, you look at likes of Will Hughes as a great example and Wharton as well, two players who came from the league below to a solid Premier League side like Palace, and they've been able to really, really thrive. And I think with the exception of who was their most recent loss, it was Everton at home, which I think was a big surprise. But that's when, since Moyes has come in, they've really found their feet. And then home against Brentford as well. Their home form is a bit worse than their away form this season. They've only won one out of their last three home Premier League games and lost two against Brentford and Everton. So it does put us in relatively good stead, I think, and we should be a bit more confident this weekend, considering, as we've pointed out, we have been much better away from home this season. Yeah. But it's going to be a tough game for sure. I think it's a well-run club, both on the pitch and off the pitch. Yeah. And hats off to them for maintaining that spot in the Premier League, because it's a tough thing to do, but they're doing really well at the moment, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree. And you touched on it there. Obviously, since the turn of January, they've been well up there. And obviously I was looking at sort of how they started anyway, and the first couple of months, obviously they were there with us, weren't they? They were the other team that was saying, no, we need to stay in touch with them to see how we can do, etc., etc. Because their first 8 games, they didn't win. They didn't win in their first 8 games, which to me sounds mental, because you look at them play now, and that's not a team who didn't win in their first 8 games. But obviously, they had some injuries, and they've had players come back, like you mentioned Wharton then. Do you think it's because of that they've got a couple of players back and they've finally started to gel? Do you think that's where they finally turned it round? Because they look a different team from the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean, like you said there, though, the amount of points they had around the halfway point of the season was very similar to us, slightly higher. But, they just managed to kick on, and we just haven't not been able to kick on. We've kind of maintained that. Like, they've got 16 points, which, you won this this calendar year, which is 1 point less than we've got the entire season. And I think the reason they've been able to sort of kick on and do that is, they've got a lot more quality there. As I said, they've got England internationals. 3 of the lads in that team were called up to Southgate's squad last year. 2 of them made a major impact as well in the Euros last year. And Premier League experience, it's a cliche to say, but it very much is the case. And just being level-headed, they were kind of at this point last season. I don't think they had as poor of a start to the previous campaign as we did this year, but they had a much better second half of the season last year as well. And it appears to be the case as well. Palace are always a team like that where, because I don't think anyone really goes into a season like looking at them as a contender for Europe or a contender for relegation. And that's exactly where they are now. But I think they're getting highlighted a lot more right now is because they had such a torrid start and have now moved to where they should be. I think if they maintain this form from the start of the season, they would be within that pack of this season's been, Liverpool have been fantastic. But with the fall of City this season, you've seen the rise of your Bournemouths, Brentfords, Brighton's continuing to do great, and a few other sides like that. And I think if Palace had this form that they do now at the start of the year, they may have been even higher for them, which, I'm sure is where they want to be. Fulham, another side included, have had a really good year as well.
Yeah.
But as the Palace lads pointed out on their podcast, I don't think there's a specific reason why they've managed to crack on, because Wharton is a great player, but I don't think just his return has made them skyrocket the league. Yeah. I just think it's just mellowing out that drama they had at the start of the season, knowing they've got the quality there. Mateta is becoming one of the best strikers in the Premier League. I don't think we'll see him this weekend, luckily, because he got bonked in the head in the FA Cup last week, unfortunately. So not an injury. I'm going to want to have him on the pitch sooner, are they? But just well-run, mature players, and they really know what they're doing out there, and it's showing, especially this second half of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. How much do you think this is down to Glasner then, like Oliver Glasner? Because he seems like a very good manager. Do you think after this season he could, maybe get and this is no disrespect to Crystal Palace, of course, but a bigger job perhaps, because the job he's done is something. Yeah, it's quite incredible, really. I think he's really done a hell of a job at Palace. How much do you think that it's all down to him then, or is it a combination of the players finally playing together, or is it all just him kind of thing?
I think you definitely have to give him a lot of credit. He's been in the job for just over a year now, and since he's been there, he's got just under 50% win rate. I think he's managed 47 and won 22. So for a side, as we said, middle of the table, that's kind of what you'd expect of Palace. But I think the way he's got them playing and the chances he's given to certain players, I think young English players as well, Palace have always been really, really good for that. You look at a young Wilfried Zaha and Nathaniel Klein a few lads years ago, and he wasn't part of the system then, but it's what you come to expect of them. So he's kept that tradition with likes of Eze, Wharton and Gay being pivotal players for them. But I think what he brings, and it's something Palace have been lacking, is that sort of wanting a bit more. I think trophy, a great chance of the FA Cup this season. Bar City, it's anyone's trophy, really, isn't it? With the exception of maybe Preston. Sorry, Preston fans, but it's just a really open field, that trophy this season, and they've got a really great chance of doing it. And I think that's something they're really going to focus on, especially if their spot in the Premier League secure for another season. They'll be going hammer and tong at that. And he's used to winning silverware in recent seasons. He won the Europa League with Frankfurt, 21-22 season, which Frankfurt, I'm not going to pretend I'm the biggest expert on German football, but they're not. We know they're not like your Bayerns or your Dortmunds, are they? They're or now Leverkusen as well. They're sort of just below that echelon of quality, and he had some great players in that team. You saw Jovic, who went on to Real Madrid, and a few other lads there, and he's managed to improve that team. So you saw Jovic leave Frankfurt to go to Real Madrid, which was a ridiculous transfer, and it didn't work out. But you saw. You could argue that a lot of the quality and the reason he was playing so great was down to the manager, because you've seen certain players come through Wharton. Was he a League One Championship player? But no one was really expecting much from him when he signed, and he's turned into an absolute world beater and could be CDM for England in 5 years' time, after Rice is sort of approaching 30. So I think there's a lot of credit there in terms of going to a quote unquote bigger club. I don't think so for the time being. He's only been there for a year. I mean, his previous 2 jobs with in Germany with Wolfsburg and Frankfurt, they were around the 2-year mark. It's July to June, 19 to 21 and 21 to 23. So, he did kind of make the step up in German football there, going from Wolfsburg to Frankfurt. But so you could maybe see him going to, I don't know, a Spurs if Ange doesn't work out, or
I could see
United in a year's time. But I think for now, at least give him another year. This is his first full season, and it was a slow start, but they found their feet. And I think he'll be hoping, and if they win the FA Cup as well, but he's going nowhere, is he? Because they're going to throw more money at him, as they should. But I think he's done a great job in the short time he's been there, because he's really given them an identity on the pitch. I think off the pitch, like we said, mid-table, that's what we expected them, regardless of who's in like the managerial dugout for them. But the style of play, I think he's changed a lot and given players a chance. And some stars have risen on that team. Mateta's a great example, isn't he? And a few others.
Yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree, man. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him as Glasner, I think. Absolutely. All right, well, thank you for that one then, Tom. That was, of course, part one. We'll leave you with a bit of an advert now, and then part two will, of course, come to the mighty town. And we're back with part two. Thank you very much for still joining us. So, Tom, we'll crack straight on. Obviously, we want to talk about Ipswich, more about the Premier League and everything. But I just thought I want to get your views on the recent FA Cup tie with Nottingham Forest. I genuinely thought it was a really good game, to be honest, and absolutely gutted, of course, because I thought we were going to do it and get to the quarters. I really did. And that would have been a nice little cup run, like we said at the beginning of the season. But not to be. Absolute heartbreaker at the end. But your thoughts on the game, mate?
Yeah, I think your prediction at the start of the season to have a cup run, I'm still counting it as one.
Yeah.
Getting last 16 and coming as close as we did to get to the quarters. I'm counting that because it's been a long time we've had that sort of action in a cup competition. So that's been one of the good things about the season, wasn't it? I didn't expect it to be as much of a second team, so to speak, as what it was.
Yeah,
there was a lot of changes to the side. We saw the likes of Morsey coming back into the team. Him and Longo back together, which was like a pairing I didn't think I'd see this season, to be honest. But I thought Morsey was fantastic. Played all 120 minutes. And really put in a good shift. With him being in that starting lineup against Forest, in my head at the start of the game at least, it was like, he's not going to be one of the starting CDMs or centre mids going forward in the league. It'll be Phillips and Q-State. But the performance he put in there, that shows why he's the captain, doesn't it? Because Forest have been, one of the best teams in the league all season. Mm-hmm. And yes, they started with a relatively weaker side, but by the end of it was pretty much their Premier League 11, as almost was ours as well. But he stayed there after, we've sort of spoken a lot this season about his legs sort of giving way and not being able to keep up with the pace of the Premier League and stuff, but completely trumped that this week. I don't know if because he played all those minutes on Monday night, if asking him to play a full 90 on Saturday maybe not possible, unfortunately, but really, really good performance from him. And I think it's just when we play away from home, honestly, mate, I don't know what it is. It's just a change in sort of morale. I think the confidence looks higher. Like it's us against the world mentality seems to be even when we play away from home. Great to see Hurst get a goal as well. I think if we do unfortunately go back down to the Championship, he'll be I'm happy for him to be our starting striker, absolutely, because the few games he started this year, he's either scored a goal or been key to a goal being created, and he's still a top player. Very similar to Delap, I think, slightly bit less speed and strength, but similar playing style, sort of holding off the centre back and running on. So there were positives, obviously, which we'll probably touch on a bit more of the preview for the game. Some more injuries did rear their head. It was great to see Burgess and Townsend being aside, but both enough at half time, didn't they? And don't look like they're going to be playing this weekend against Palace, which is a big loss because I know we've said maybe Burgess should be coming back to this team. But difficult losing on penalties again. I think when Taylor stepped up, I did kind of think he's not going to score it because everyone else's penalties are great. But, he did miss against Wimbledon early in the season. And that, obviously, this is a bigger game, but that must have been weighing on his mind, surely. And it inevitably did because he missed. But what did you think of just the whole result, cut runs, certain players? Positive to take, despite the fact we did get eliminated from the cup, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was pretty much the same as you, really, Tom, mate. So, it was nice to see, nice to have a cup run, and it was nice to see a good performance as well. It wasn't just a boring sort of cup tie. We actually did play well, which was good to see because obviously in the recent weeks anyway, it's not been the best, shall we say. But yeah, good to get. Well, I say a good result. Obviously, it's a 1-1 draw, but obviously losing on penalties. But
I'll take that in the league 1-0 at Forest right now.
Absolutely, you'd snatch your hand off for that. But yeah, good to have a cup run. Nice to see us play well. Good to see other players, get a couple of minutes like Luongo. It's good to see him get some game time because I don't think he's going to get any more. Because obviously, no more cups. Can't see him getting any minutes now. So, it was nice to see him play with Morsey again. And, I agree with you. Morsey was unbelievable, really. If he can do that, carry that forward, I can see him starting most games again. But, you touched on him, Jack Taylor. I just wanted to get your opinion. How do you think that's going to affect him? Because obviously he does play in the Premier League anyway. He gets a few minutes here and there. Do you think that's going to weigh on him for the rest of the season? I hope not, and I don't see why it would, but it's a question that I think should be asked because, like you said, Wimbledon, he missed that penalty, and then he's done exactly the same in the FA Cup as well. How do you think he's going to take that?
I mean, it's obviously an aspect of his game he needs to work on. It's not very often that he takes penalties for us. The 2 times he's done it this season, he has missed. But the sort of player he is, and his role in the team is one obviously predominantly off the bench. And being that sort of player and being that sort of position can knock your confidence a lot. And if you're not starting week in, week out, it can do that. I think he's been one of the few players this season. I'm not saying he's been like an absolute world beater this year, but he's never really been much of an issue when he's come off the bench. He's tried his best. The quality's been a bit too great. But, we talk about the rise Ipswich have made in the past years. He's probably individually been on an even bigger one coming from Peterborough, like the league below there as well. And then, playing against, Mohamed Salah and all those guys in the opening day of the season. Like, it's such a huge jump in such a short space of time. So I think not just to get to grips with it physically, as he and many others have done this season, but mentally it's been really difficult just to make yourself give yourself surety that I'm meant to be on the pitch against these guys, which I'm sure he does think that, but it's been difficult, I think, for certain players like that. But I think he's a reliable hand, and I don't think you'll knock him too much because it's not he'll be the first thing. That's not what we expect from him as a player to be banging in penalties week after week. Like, he's there to be in the middle of the field and just sort of look after the ball a bit more, which he has done on occasion. Obviously, he was one of the players who was key to giving us one of our few wins this season with that header at Wolves. So, he's given us maybe our biggest moment of the season on the pitch, bar the Chelsea game. So you got to be thanking for that, and I'm sure he'll carry that with us. And if things can go well in the next few weeks with victory against Wolves and a few other points here and there, that may come to be pivotal as well. So he'll be one of the players we have to thank for that. But yeah, difficult night for him, but hopefully I'm sure he'll be sort of heads up moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd have to agree. He's a good player as well. Like you say, he's made the leap up, and like you said, if obviously it's looking more likely than ever as the weeks go on. But if we do go down, I think Taylor will be a very, very good player to keep hold of. So fingers crossed for him that he keeps his head up because he's a good player. I just before we go into another break, I just want to touch on, obviously we'll come back to the Premier League with us. Obviously it was good to see her starting against Forest. And like you say, when he plays, he seems to pick up a goal. Obviously, the lap, he's not going to be here in summer if we go down 100%. We all know that. But with the lap, I think we've touched on it previously, but do you think we rely on him too much at the minute?
Absolutely.
Is that because I was thinking, obviously you're thinking the same, but I think if we maybe start giving Hurst more minutes before the end of the season, we can see what he can do going forward as well. Is that something that you'd be keen to maybe see happening?
I mean, in terms of giving him more minutes, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I'm in complete agreement with you where we do rely on him so much, and it must weigh on him physically as well. And it does kind of make us a bit one-dimensional, having that sort of one threat. It's just a difficult issue in the fact that in my opinion, our second best sort of goal-scoring player who can be there or thereabouts to give the keeper a bit of a worry is our second striker. And usually that means that he's not going to be on the bench. He's only going to be on the pitch when our starting striker is off the pitch. I've always been quite, keen to see him on the pitch at the same time. It's been very rare. I think we saw it against United, which, really we didn't threaten the net much at all in that second half, unfortunately. But it could be something worth trying. We're trying to get as many goals as possible, but that's a complete change of system if that was the case. It's a difficult situation, isn't it? Because, like I said, I do think George Hurst can provide something slightly different, but you're going to sacrifice our best player in terms of goals. But it's difficult, isn't it? I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know, man, because you're losing something. You're losing some real quality if you put him in. But I get the point of getting more on the pitch because the two of them on the pitch could provide something. But if one of them goes down on the pitch together, you're kind of screwed moving forward, aren't you?
Yeah.
Bring back Al-Hamadi.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it is always a tricky one when you've got a striker that is so good and then another one that you think could probably do something as well. It's always going to be a tough one, but I just hope that they can both start scoring more goals. Absolutely. But we'll take another little short break, and in part 3, obviously, we'll cover sort of our lineup, score predictions, and everything like that. Yes, hello, and we're back with part 3, and we'll jump straight into it, Tom. So obviously, I'll just probably start with a bit of the lineups, but before we do that, obviously, we don't want to sound like we're complaining too much, but our injuries this season have definitely been a hindrance as well. They've not helped us at all. We've signed players and they've got injured, so we're missing them again. Obviously, is it bad luck, Tom? Is that what you think is done our season, or is it a little bit more than that, do you think?
I think it's a mixture. I know injuries can be seen as like a classic excuse because every club obviously goes for injuries as the season goes on. It's just a part of the game, isn't it? But the amount we've had has been ridiculous. We noticed right at the start in the first game of the season that we need a player on the right because Burns probably can't cut it as a starter. Yeah. We brought in Bennett, who I thought could have been that guy and looked great. Then he got injured as well, so we needed someone else to replace him as well. And then we kind of addressed that with a few other signings coming through, but predominantly that's still been a whole the entire season, hasn't it? And then you bring in Ciso in January, who could be a real game changer. And again, the few games we've seen of him, he should be back. I think it's hopefully end of this month, start of April. But the few games we've seen of him, he looked great. Then got injured as well. And then, Sammy Schmodic, who can bang in a goal or two away from home, got a great goal start of the year against Fulham. He's injured as well. It's just there's a lot of people, isn't there, who, we would rely on to be a bit of quality on the pitch, and they're predominantly all out. Amari Hutchinson, my player, jury's out on him as to whether it's not. It's been a decent season, but he's out. Calvin Phillips is now out as well. Townsend's out. Burgess. There's a lot of names here, and I think the fact that I'm naming all these names here, it's not just random throwaways, is it? They're important players. Do you think that could be a reason? I kind of think it is, to be honest, and it is a bit valid.
Absolutely, I completely agree. So just excuse me, just for sort of everyone listening, obviously you've mentioned most of the players, but I'll just go through the full list fully now. So obviously we've got Burns who's out, and then Bennett, Hutchinson, Walton, Enciso, Phillips, Twanzebe, Burgess, Schmodic, and Connor Chaplin as well. And I mean, you go through that whole list, and they're such important players. Like most of them injuries there are such important players. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to say that's been a massive hindrance on us, and I do think that's why we're not a bit further up the table, because I truly believe fully fit team, I think we would have more of a chance right now to stay up than what we do at the minute. And I think most fans would agree with that, and I'm sure you would. Is that right, Tom? I think.
Yeah. I mean, there's still quality in there. I think it's just now our bench and like the issue we've had a lot this season is players coming off the bench haven't been able to match the quality that our opposition has coming off the bench. But we're fully fit. You can get like those three behind Delap. If we had Philogene, Hutchinson, and Ciso as that three, it's a fantastic three. I think that's a mid-table free man there. And then off the bench, you got Schmodic, Chaplin, Ogbene. That's three decent players to replace there. Is it Burns potentially as well? Yeah. Half of those, more than half of those names there won't be able to play this weekend. So you're then going to have to rely on the ones who start to play more minutes, and also the ones to replace them to not be as good coming off the bench, or asking players to play in a position they're not necessarily accustomed to. One thing I've seen online, I don't know if you've seen much of this, because I think Richard raised it a week or so ago when we spoke about potentially having in a 3 or a 5, because I think he's been great in the few times we've seen him, but having Davis on that left side of a 3 and then having Townsend in the left back role. We don't usually like having the same guy or two players in the same position on the pitch at the same time, but I think it could provide something quite interesting. I don't think we'll ever see it. This is kind of a devil's advocate formation guess here, but I think Townsend looks really sound in every time he's been on the pitch, and Davis, I think defensively he's good, but going forward he's even better. And it could be kind of a cool pairing to see. Would you see that working? I don't think it's going to happen. I'll just put it out there, but I think it'd be a good way to fix some certain things on that side of the field.
Yeah, I mean, I could absolutely see it working, because, like you said, just for the reasons you've absolutely said, Davis could get more forward. And yeah, I could absolutely see it working, but will we see it? No, I don't think so. Like you say, it's just a bit of devil's advocate in it, but I'd like to see it, because why not start experimenting? What else have we got to lose? Do you know what I mean? Let's try some things. Maybe we need to try some new things, and maybe that's the thing that we're missing. But speaking of that, if we do try anything, in the next coming weeks, I'll ask you this now before we get to the end. Do you genuinely think we can turn this around?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's no. I mean, I said it on yesterday. There's still no reason yet to be writing our obituaries. Yeah, I think if the gap does close, extend more than it has now, then probably not. But the fact that we've still got to play Wolves at home, which is a must-win game, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah.
If the gap stays what it is, or it decreases even more if it decreases, to be honest. But the fact that we've still got to play them, still got to go to Leicester as well, and then again, I said this on Thursday's show, and I said it probably a few other times this season. I know one man doesn't make a team, but with Mateus Cunha being out for 3 games now after his silly incident against Bournemouth in the Cup, of him being out for the next 3 games, you see how reliable, how much they rely on him. I know they've improved under the new manager ever so slightly, but they still do. He scores most goals for them still.
Yeah.
So the fact that he won't be there for the next 3 games, I think mentally that will really scupper them as well. And yeah, why not? It's been a long season. They haven't been able to run away from us too much. We've kind of been in there or thereabouts. I think 2025 has been much more harder than 2024 because we haven't had the luxury of sort of being like, we're the new boys. And to be honest, I think the performances were better. Yeah. Injuries weren't as big. There's been a lot of reasons why 2025 has been more difficult. But yeah, if we can maintain this gap, or like I said, decrease it, and then get a victory against Wolves in 3 or 4 games' time. You've got international break coming up, which fitness-wise is going to help. Usually, I don't like the international break because it gets in the way of the season. But it's going to be a week's break for everyone, and predominantly most of our players won't be going on international duty. You might get Delap and Hutchinson and Philogene going on under 21s, or maybe Delap even getting a call up to Tuchel's first squad. I don't know, maybe, hopefully. But predominantly, not many people are going to be getting called up, and that's going to help us as well and give everyone a week's break. So you never know. What do you think? Like, I'm still want to remain positive.
No, I'm with you, mate. Absolutely. I'm still absolutely with you. I still think we can do it. I'm still positive. It's just getting closer and closer and more nervy and nervy, which I do not like. Yeah. But I'm absolutely with you. I do think we can do it. Obviously, we're going to have some players that will return at important parts of the season when we've got likes of Wolves and Leicester and everything. So, yeah, I don't see any reason why not. And it would be incredible if we do. But obviously, for sticking with more recent times, obviously we've got Palace on Saturday. We'll start with sort of the lineups then, just a quick sort of run through. Obviously Palmer, unbelievable. To be fair, he's going to start. Run me through what you think sort of the back line is going to be and your midfield and everything.
Yeah, I think we'll stick with a 4 now. Yeah. I think just because we've only really got 3 centre backs in Wolfenden, O'Shea and Greaves, so I think having all 3 of them start is a bit dangerous. To be fair, now, even if for some people it might be the preferred formation. So I think we'll see a 4. I think we'll see Greaves and O'Shea as a pairing. I saw in the FA Cup game on Monday. There was a moment in the game where Greaves, just for me as a Town player, this was summed up where he put a fantastic block in and a tackle in, and then held the ball and was looking to play it out from the back and just fluffed it. Then the player who from Forest intercepted, he got it back straight away because his interceptions are so good. But it's just creativity, I think, with the ball was really poor. But I still think, they'll be the 2 there. Davis on the left, despite my sort of desire for him to go a bit further forward in Townsend there, I do still see Davis playing there. And then the rights, I was going to say difficult, but I mean, it's either going to be Godfrey or Ben Johnson, but I think Ben Johnson starting to right. He's struggled a lot more in a pure right back role than he has in a right wing back role this season.
Yeah.
But with Twanzebe out injured again, it's going to have to be Johnson starting because I don't really have much faith in Godfrey. The fact that I didn't mention Godfrey there as one of our centre backs, I just remembered he was one, shows that it's not going to be that, and we need to go a bit more forward as well. Midfield 2 as well. I think now it'll probably be Morsey and Kiyuste because Phillips is out again. So I think if Morsey's legs are up for it, you're going to have to see Kiyuste now do a 90-minute effort because this season he's predominantly been 60 or 70 minutes. But with Phillips out injured and Morsey having just run his socks off for 120 minutes, only 5 days or so removed from Saturday's game, you can't expect him to play a full 90 really. So I think that would be that one. Is that similar for you? That sort of defensive part of the team for you before you move to the attack?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially with the injuries at the minute, I think that's the best way that we can set up, I think. So yeah, I'm in complete agreement. I can't see any other sort of major changes happening. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's just going to be what you've just said exactly. And I think going forward, obviously, Delap's going to start in. And who do you think's going to be out on the wings then?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I think the injuries have made this slightly easier because there's less players to pick from. But it's always, no matter who's fit, you still don't really know who's going to be on the 10, who's going to be in the right and the left. I do expect, because, like you said, with Amari out now as well, who was our front three for Forest in the week? So Broadhead, Hurst, and Hurst was a striker. It was Clark as well, wasn't it? I think we'll see Clark on the left. I think he's, it's been quite a bleak month or so, but he's been pretty good. I think like he seems to be finding his feet a bit more now as a Town player, which I think is really good. Either we go down or not, I think he's going to be an important player for us next season, and he's definitely moved on. Philogene on the right. He's again with Amara Hutchinson out injured now. He really needs to pick up the mantle and be the player many have expected him to be. He got a brace against United, albeit a very dodgy brace, but he scored 2 goals for us now. He's off the mark in the Prem for Ipswich, isn't he? So hopefully he continue that, and we need him to be a key player for us. Then in the middle, probably Broadhead. Yeah. I know it's a strange position for him, but I'm just trying to think who could be that middle role as well. Because Chaplin, Schmodix, and Hutchinson, all three of them out. They really are 10s, aren't they? All three of those guys right there, and all three of them are out. Maybe you could have sort of Clark floating middle or Philogene floating middle, but I think those three again. I'm not sure specifically who's going to be in or about, who's going to be on the right, left, and the middle. But I would say those three behind the lap because it is kind of get slim pickings now, isn't it?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'd have to absolutely agree, 100%. I think again with the injuries, Broadhead, I really like him. I'd love him to start on the left, but I think Clark has been playing well, and then probably Broadhead through the middle. I would absolutely have to 100% agree with you there, mate. I do think it's going to be that lineup. And just going off that, just before we finish, little score prediction, what do you reckon?
I said 1-1 yesterday, so I'll stick with that. I can't see us getting a win there, but away's been a lot more joyful this season than it has been at home, and Palace aren't as good at home as they are on the road. I know they did beat Villa 4-1 recently at home, but prior to that, it was pretty bleak with 2 back-to-back losses, so who's to say they can't get 3 losses out of the last 4 home games, and we can get 1 on the board as well. And hopefully Wolves can have another slip up. But I'll go 1-1. Any point gained is good right now, isn't it? And hopefully that'll be the case. What about you? Yeah,
absolutely. I've been saying 1-1 as well. So hopefully we can go pick up a point at Palace, and then we'll have a nice catch up for after the game. But thank you very much, Tom. Thanks for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you guys for listening. Remember to go like all of our socials, GSPN Daily Ipswich, and we will see you very soon.